Now, last week we went through a couple of, I think, important aspects of a Jew and his daily routine, such as we went through a little bit of the prayer book, of what a Jew needs to pray. We talked mostly about kashrut, about keeping a kosher home and what that all entails in keeping a kosher home. What do you have to have in the home, what do you have to look for in the home, and all different questions. Tonight, I wanted to start off just a little bit to go through, because I noticed that last week when I used certain phrases, some of them maybe have been unfamiliar to people. So I just wanted to go over quickly how we came to get these set of laws, because Judaism, as we've known for many years, is a religion of deeds. You got to do this, you got to do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, you got to go there, you can't do there. I mean, all yes, yes, no, no's, maybes, and a bunch of different things in the middle. All right, versus a religion which is basically based on faith or creeds, etc., etc. Well, it all starts off with the Bible. In the Bible, if you read through, especially the 5 books of Moses, in there there's 613 general commandments. What I mean a commandment is something that God told Moses to tell the Jewish people, this is you should do, this you shouldn't do. And it breaks down basically to 365 don'ts and 248 do's. Okay? So if you add them together, it's 613. Trust me. You don't have to do the math. It's been done already a few times. Trust me. That's the way it is. It's 613. 365 no's, 248 do's. Now, what for example is a do? A do is you should eat matzah on Passover. So there's a special mitzvah of on Passover to eat flattened bread. What's a don't? Don't is don't eat bread on Passover. So here you pick up 2 quick brownie points. If you eat matzah and with your sandwich instead of eating bread, there you go. You've just done 2 mitzvahs. 1, you've refrained from eating bread, and 2, you've eaten the matzah. Okay? Another one, for example, is on Sukkot, you're supposed to eat outside. So if you eat whatever, a meal outside, you've done another mitzvah. Take the lulav and esrog, shake it, you've done another mitzvah. Resting on Shabbos is another mitzvah. All of these are the do's. What's the don'ts? The don't is don't commit murder, don't commit adultery, don't commit idolatry, don't lie, etc., etc., etc. You know all the don'ts. Now, a lot of them, of the 613, are not applicable today. When I say not applicable, means that a lot of them were connected to the temple service. Like if you go through the book of Leviticus especially, many of the laws were directly connected with sacrifices, which, as at least an organized Jewish community, we don't bring. Maybe some of you bring sacrifices in the back of you don't have an altar in your backyard, although it's probably difficult to get that through an ordinance here in Long Beach. But generally, all laws concerning sacrifices are right now suspended, because we're in exile, we don't live in Jerusalem, we don't have a temple, so we don't bring any sacrifices, we don't have a temple, so all the laws concerning the temple, we don't have really a priesthood, so all the laws concerning priests, so that knocks off a considerable amount of rules and regulations that we as Jews don't adhere to anymore, because we're not living in Israel under a monarchy with a temple and with a priesthood and bringing sacrifices. Okay. But that still leaves a tremendous amount to do. Even if we don't have those, we still have a tremendous amount to do. How did it work? What happened was that Moses had a revelation from God. God would call to him and he would say, Moses, I want you to tell the people that on this and this day, this and this time of the year, this and this holiday is going to take place. So let's pick the last holiday we just had, Sukkot. On the 15th day of the 7th month, you and the Jewish people shall dwell in a booth. Now again, it's very important to remember this, that if I use any words or terminologies or phrases that you're not familiar with, do not sit there and stare at me, okay? And look blankly at me. What I want you to do is raise your hand and say, Rabbi, what exactly do you mean by a sukkah? What exactly do you mean on the 7th month? What exactly do you mean on the 15th day? Right? Don't take anything for granted. You're here to learn, and if you're going to be shy, you're not going to be able to learn. There you go. First question, Carol.
Okay, if we don't do sacrifices anymore, why is it that every single Shabbos we read about them?
Okay, good. Because the Talmud says, even though we don't have them, but if you study about them, I'll consider it as if you brought them. So now what we've done is we've substituted our prayers, lip service, for the sacrifice itself. And you shall consider the prayers of our lips as if we've brought a sacrifice itself. So therefore, if you study about a sin offering, it's as if you brought the sin offering. If you study about a guilt offering, it's as if you brought a guilt offering. And that's why every day, not only on the Sabbath, but every single day in the morning prayers, you will notice that we talk about the temple service. This was brought, and that was brought, and this was done, and that was done, and there's a whole series of prayers just dedicated to that. Okay, so let's go back to Sukkot. So now God told Moses on the 15th day of the 7th month, I want you to tell the people of Israel to live in a booth. Okay, so Moses says, what do you mean live in a booth? What exactly does a booth mean? Does it mean like a phone booth? Does it mean a box? Does it mean a refrigerator box? I mean, exactly what does it mean? So God gave him all of the particulars. No, it's got to be a temporary booth with a temporary roof on it. And they're supposed to sit there for 8 days. Okay, once he himself understood the rule, he went to his brother Aaron and told first Aaron. Then he taught it to Aaron's sons. Then he taught it to the 70 elders. So Moses receives it from God, first teaches it to Aaron, then teaches it to the sons, then teaches it to the 70 elders, and then gives a public sermon about it. Teaches it to all of the Jews. Okay? So he went through this 4 times, every single rule. First to Aaron, 1, sons 2, elders 3, general populace 4. Any questions that anybody had during this time, they would approach him and say, what does the roof need to be made out of? Could it be made out of bricks? Could it be made out of wood? Could it be made out of these fake ficuses? Could it be made out of what is the roof? And Moses would then answer each individual question. If he didn't know, he had a direct line to whom? God. And he would ask God, okay, we have this problem. What do you mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? What do you do? Fine. Until the law was engraved in everybody's head. Now, were they allowed to write down any of the particulars? No. I want you to remember that they were not allowed to write anything down except that which was written in the Torah. So in the Torah, all it says was, thou shalt live for 7 days in a sukkah. That's all it says. Well, what about all of the particulars and all of the tributaries and all of the derivatives? That was transmitted orally. Meaning from one generation to another generation to another generation to another generation. And every generation would hear from their fathers and their mothers and then pass it on to their children, etc., etc., etc. And that's how the Torah and what we call halacha, which is the framework of Jewish law, was transmitted from one people to another people to another people to another people, all the way down from one generation to another generation. Okay? There came a time about 1,800 years ago, or a little bit less, maybe but it's probably about 1,800 years ago already, that the Jews were not living in Israel anymore. Jews were exiled. They were kicked out. They were sent to live in Babylon. Now, when you live in Babylon, you're talking a different language. You're living in a different culture. They decided at that moment that they are going to write down all of the oral tradition, everything that was transmitted orally. So let's go back to the law of Sukkah. How many walls do you need? What can the walls be made out of? How big the walls have to be? What's the smallest size it could be? Does it have to be square? Could it be round? Can it be under a tree? All of these particulars were written down in what we call today the oral tradition. So in Judaism, you'll know that when you go out there and your neighbor asks you, what's the oral tradition in Judaism? You'll know to answer them that this is what we call the Talmud. Are you familiar with that? You've heard of the book called the Talmud? The Talmud is all of the oral tradition that was accumulated over hundreds and 1,000 years went into that book. Now, I shouldn't say the book, but it's a series of books. It's many, many, many volumes. And it encompasses all of Jewish law, from one end to the other end. Now, you know that over the time, things change. Like, now electricity is introduced, which wasn't around in Moses' days. Stem cell research, all of these new innovations that have come up through the ages, how do they get incorporated in this series of laws? What do we do with electricity, for example? Can you use electricity? Can you not use electricity? What are the all of these things? So there are set rabbis who discuss it and look for precedent and back and forth until they come to a conclusion. Once a conclusion is reached, it becomes law, incorporated. This is how we do it. This is what's done, and that's the way it works. And that's what we call halacha. Now, as I mentioned to you before, much of the Talmud deals with laws of sacrifices, the temple. Those we've set aside. I mean, there are people who study it still because just for the knowledge sake. But as far as practically speaking, we only want to deal with those things that we have to do today. This is not a class on theoretical Judaism, it's a class on practical Judaism. And I wanted just to give you a kind of a sense of an idea. Of course, I can go on a lot about this because over the ages, you know how it came in, but that's basically, we have now two sets of rules. The written tradition, that's called the Chumash, the Torah, and then we have the Talmud, which is a commentary on the Torah, the halachic commentary, the rules that explain everything in here. Why do we need that? Because if you read this book, has anybody gone through the Bible, ever read anything in the Bible? You've read things in the Bible, right? Everybody's read things in the Bible. Take, for example, the most famous part of the Ten Commandments. I'm a very bad guy when I want to give you a quiz. I want to ask you, what is the most important part of the 10 Commandments? No, what I wanted to say is, what's the most important part of the Bible? What's the most important part of the Bible? Could it be there you go. Corliss got it. Corliss got the 10 Commandments. Now I want to give you an example of what the problem lay within just reading it biblically. Because here's where we have a major difference with the Christians. Because you see, because here we argue you have to have a commentary that accompanies the Torah. If you don't have a commentary, see, of course the Christians don't believe in the Talmud. It doesn't have anything to do with Christianity. But Judaism is based upon the Talmud because we believe that the rules and regulations in the Torah are still valid today. They were never abrogated, never set aside. They're still valid today. So here we go, okay? Just bear with me. Here is one of the rules that I wanted to talk about tonight. It is, I think, the most important mitzvah in the entire Torah. Of the 613, this is probably numero uno in my book. You know, everybody could argue what's more important, what's not important, what's higher in the hierarchy, what's lower, but I think this is number one. And you know what that is? Take a guess. What is it? What? No, I tell you why that's important, but I don't think it's numero uno because that is too esoteric. You see, I mean, believing in one God, you know, you think of God one way, I think of God another way, you may think of God in a different way. We all believe in one God, but in our minds, it's not really something you do. It's something you just walk around with. You have belief, you have faith, it's with you. This mitzvah is something you actually do for it. And that would be, thank you very much, observe the Sabbath. I think that is the number one mitzvah in the Torah. Why do I think that more important than thou shalt not murder? Of course, you should murder. I mean, don't go out of here thinking that Rabbi Perelmuter said, as long as you keep the Sabbath, you could murder somebody. No, that's not what I'm saying. Of course, thou shalt not murder. But I think Sabbath has in itself so much, everything it has within itself, everything that we hold near and dear about Judaism. Now, I want to read you from the 10 Commandments, and then I'm going to ask you to explain to me how we have to actually do this, okay? This is verbatim. I'm not adding anything, and nor am I subtracting. Straight from the Torah. Remember the Sabbath day to sanctify it. 6 days shall you work and accomplish all your work. But the 7th day is Sabbath to Hashem your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son, your daughter, your slave, your maidservant, your animal, your convert within your gates. For in 6 days Hashem made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. And he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, Hashem blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it. Okay? That is the rule concerning the laws of Sabbath. Okay? Now, how do we keep Sabbath? Think about it. Don't tell me what we do today. Forget about what we do today. Listening to the rule. You're sitting, I'm Moses, you're the elders, I'm telling you what God said to me, and I want you to explain to me, how do we keep Sabbath? What do we do?
To gather enough food before the Sabbath starts.
But it doesn't say anywhere about gathering food here.
Mana?
No, it doesn't say anything about the manna. It doesn't say anything. It says, remember the Sabbath day to sanctify it. 6 days shall you work and accomplish all your work. But the seventh day you don't do any work. So what do we do on the seventh day?
Rest.
Okay, rest. So we know that one of the things is we're going to put down on the ledger sheet, rest. We need to rest. Okay. Anything else that we need to do from here? Doesn't seem like it, right?
Well,
It says, remember the Sabbath to sanctify it. Okay, so what are we going to do? We have to sanctify it. Right? We don't know what that means, but we don't know what sanctification means. But, do I have a... Paul, can I ask you a favor? Can I get a piece of paper from the back? Just one of those, I'm sorry. Okay? I want to show you the difficulty here. I'm doing this as an exercise because, of course, there's an answer to the end of all of this. I hope. But I just want you to understand the difficulty that we're facing over here when we talk about the Bible. If you want to be a biblical Jew. Thank you very much, Paul. Sorry. Okay? So now we have two things that we have to do, right? One is rest. We're putting down here on this side. On the don'ts, because that would be a don't, right? Don't do any work. Two, on this side of the ledger, is sanctify it. Okay. Okay. Now, let's talk about the left-hand side first, rest. Okay? We have to rest. Now, if we were biblical and just follow the rules of the Bible, what does that mean? Now, we know from previous encounters that the day in Judaism starts not at 6 o'clock in the morning at daybreak. When does a Jewish day start? The night before. So Friday night is the beginning of the Sabbath. Okay? So Friday night the sun goes down, it's gone, it's over. What do we do at that point? Nothing. We do absolutely nothing. We sit ourselves down in an easy chair and we rest. And we twiddle our thumbs and we rest and we rest and we rest. Okay, the sun comes up and what are we still doing? We're resting. It's noon, what are we doing? Resting. Sun is going down on a Saturday, what are we still doing? Resting. Okay? Because it told us to do nothing else except to rest. So you can't do anything. Now, we certainly cannot do anything we did during the week, right? Because if, let's say, I was a piano tuner, can I piano tune on the seventh day? No, that's forbidden. Because why? Because it says everything that you worked previously. So now we know, but rest, now we're going to turn into a tributary, is refrain from work. Right? Besides resting, we need to refrain from work. Okay. Refrain from work. Now this is still all on the negative side. We haven't gotten to the sanctification yet. Okay, refrain from work. I want everybody here to take 10 seconds to think of something that is work, and then I'm going to go around the room and ask you, I'm Moses, you're the elders, you're smart people, what does that mean, refraining from work? So let's take 10 seconds to think about what that would possibly mean. Okay, 10 seconds have gone. We'll start with Corliss. Corliss, what does refraining from work mean to you?
not cooking.
Oh, not cooking. Okay, 1. No cooking. Go ahead.
For me?
Yes.
No emails.
No emails. Okay. Victor.
No yard work.
No yard work. Woo-hoo. Sherry.
No laundry.
No laundry. Go ahead, please. What?
No floor scrubbing.
No floor scrubbing. Okay. Shoshana.
Nothing creative.
That's too esoteric. Give me some work.
Well, you can't make like clothing.
No sewing.
Okay.
Good for you. Carol.
No housework, no caregiving.
No housework. Okay. Okay. And Rabbi, no piano carrying. Okay? Because you can't carry a piano because you're supposed to be resting. Okay? Now I'm just going to run through this again. We had no cooking, no emails, no yard work, no laundry, no floor scrubbing, no sewing, no housework, and no piano carrying. Okay? Now what we learned from all of this exercise is that left to our own devices, that means if we would all separate, we'd all become Paul, I forgot. Paul, you're hiding behind the camera. Paul.
Anything that earns money, I guess.
No business.
There you go, yes.
No business. Okay, so there's 9 rabbis here in the room. We're all going to split up. You know what this tells us? That each one of us will have a separate set of rules on Shabbos, right? Because some of us hate floor scrubbing, right? Oh yeah, I had that floor scrubbing, but I particularly happen to like floor scrubbing. So part of it, I'm going to let floor scrubbing around because what? No, you will not. You lose my number, okay? Now, for example, Corla said no cooking, but some of us love cooking, right? Some of us love watching the cooking channel, and we love making things on Shabbos, so that rabbi is going to allow cooking, because it doesn't say anywhere in here about cooking, right? Okay? We had for example, no yard work. Now that already we could understand, because that already takes us outside, it's public, it's work, it's this. Okay, so maybe we could come to consensus that yard work maybe shouldn't be allowed. Business, probably even more understandable. Why? Because business is really, yard work could be someone's pleasure. Someone loves, some guys who work, all the day, like on Wall Street, they're fighting away. So what do they do to relax? They do yard work, right? They pull the weeds out, they do that. So maybe that would be something we would allow, because it could be pleasurable. But business, definitely not, right? Because business is really something that we do and accomplish all week. Why I brought this up is because they had the same problem. Moses was confounded. What do you mean by the word work? What does work mean? Okay? So he asked 70 people and he got 71 different answers. 71 mean exactly like we had over here. One guy said no laundry, another guy said no floor scrubbing, another guy said no yard work, a guy said no sewing, and no piano carrying, and no business, okay? They had to come to some kind of a consensus, because you can't have everybody just deciding on their own. So what they decided was, and Shoshana brought this up before, was at that very time that this was given, several months later, they were instructed to build a tabernacle. If you ever read the Bible, you know that the Jews in the desert had a tabernacle that kind of followed with them. It was a temporary dwelling of God. And they decided that everything that went into building that tabernacle, every single act that went into building that tabernacle would be prohibited. Now, what are some things about building a tabernacle? Now, I want you to think about this. Forget about what you said, okay? But now I've made you in charge. You are now Bezalel, because that was the name of the head architect. You are now Bezalel. And I say to you, listen, Bezalel, I want you to think about this, and I want you to build an ark for me. Not an ark, but a tabernacle. What a tabernacle actually is was a tent, a huge tent, and inside would have been many of the vessels, an altar, a menorah, a table, burning incense, all of those things, okay? An ark to hold the Torah. I want you to think about one of the works that it's going to take for us to build this tabernacle, okay? Take 5 seconds or 10 seconds to think about what would it take to build this tabernacle. Dum, 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 dum. Dee, da, da, da. Now, the tabernacle, I should tell you, had wooden walls and had also drapery of animal furs kind of sewn together like drapes that would hang over the sides as well as on the top. So I just want to let you know how the tabernacle was erected, plus wooden and golden utensils inside. Okay, so now, starting with Corliss. Corliss, what do we need? What?
Hammering.
Hammering. That's definitely hammering. Okay, go ahead, please.
No tanning.
Tanning? Yes, because you got to tan the wool, right? You got to tan the wool or the hides. Okay, Victor.
No moving and lifting.
Lifting. Okay. Okay, lifting is good. Sherry?
Maybe planning or writing.
Planting, that's good. Planting. Okay. Go ahead, please.
What about stone cutting? Wasn't some of it?
Stone cutting, because you had, well, there was no real stone, but let's put down stone cutting because that's going to come into play in a moment. Shoshana?
Putting walls together.
Very good. Putting walls together. Carol?
No, I think we covered it all. Bricklaying, carrying.
Carrying, okay. Carrying, lifting. Paul?
Cutting wood.
Wood cutting. Okay. Rabbi, I'm going to say, okay, you had to, of course, you had the planting, you had to this, carving, you had to carve out. How about the sewing said? I'll say sewing.
Were there any jewels in anything, or?
There were jewels in the breastplate.
So instead of stone cutting, maybe the jewel cutting.
The jewel cutting?
Or the
Yeah,
metal
jewel cutting.
They
Okay.
all the metalworking.
Now, this is very interesting because, again, you see here that we've come up with 9 or 10 different works that go into it. Okay? The rabbis came up with 39. 39 different works that went into doing it. What was it? Because, for example, Corliss said hammering. Now, hammering is also the part of the process of building. See, it's part of building, where you take a nail, you put it to 2 planks together, you hammer it in. So building became a number one thing. Building, okay? But building is not by itself. That's number one. Finishing off. Now, I'm not a big carpenter, to be honest with you, but there is the last, the makeh bepatish, the last nail that goes into finishing something. That became finishing off the work, became number 2. Now, Sherry, I believe, said planting, right? Planting became, now think about this. Planting entails not only planting, but what about threshing? What about winnowing? What about growing? All of these things that took place in order to get a plant, in order to bake the challah that was necessary to put on the bread, you had to go through a whole series of steps. So planting is prohibited, winnowing is prohibited, threshing is prohibited, plowing is prohibited, baking is prohibited because you had bread in the show bread. 39 different, and most of what you said, all of you said here today, went into one of those categories. So now we have a list of 39 rules and regulations that one must refrain from doing on the Sabbath. So if you're wondering, can I weave on Shabbos? The answer is no, because weaving is making the curtains, right? Can I now make fabric? Not only the weaving, but can I make thread? Like if you have a loom, no, you can't make thread either, because that all goes into the process of making the curtains. Carrying became important because they used to carry, as Victor said, they used to lifting and carrying to and fro. That was prohibited. But one second, Rabbi. I go to synagogue on Saturday morning and then I see that everybody's carrying and lifting their sitters and they're taking it to their chairs. We lift the Torah, we take it out. How about that? Oh, so they said, you know what? Only in public you can carry. In a public domain. In a private domain, like this room, you may carry. So you may carry in your house, but you cannot carry in the street. So if a Jew is walking down the street and all of a sudden they remember they have a handkerchief in their pocket, uh-oh! Bad news. You have to throw the handkerchief on the side because there's no carrying outside. Okay? So we came up with 39, but you think they were happy with just 39? No. Because those 39, for example, Corliss, I believe, said hammering, tanning, lifting, planting. I talked about the prohibition of baking, right? Baking. What about cooking? Isn't baking like cooking? Well, the rabbi said, well, one second, they only really baked bread. They didn't cook anything else. No, but if you allow people to cook, what's going to be the next step? They're going to? So no cooking. Okay, no cooking on the Sabbath. Okay, so Corliss got her wish. She said no cooking, no cooking. Okay? So now you know how these rules and regulations got formulated. It started with 39, and now it's about 39,000 rules and regulations. Okay? Because as Paul said, and I want to go back to Paul's original statement of no business. Okay? Now think about no business. What's the number one thing we do when we deal in business? Thank you, Victor. What was that? Tell everybody.
Money.
Money. So for example, this George Washington, we put on the table. We're allowed to handle it today because today happens to be a Tuesday evening. But what about on the Sabbath? Can you handle money on the Sabbath? No, because this, even though I'm not doing any business, but this represents business. So this is what we call muktzah. It's prohibited from touching money on the Sabbath. So on Friday afternoon, you know, I'm walking around and it's 4:27 and I have $1 sticking out of my pocket. I must put the dollar away in a drawer. And I can't touch that dollar till Saturday night because it's called muktzah. Muktzah is M-U, I'm going to spell it myself. T-Z-A-H. Muktzah. Muktzah. Prohibited from touching. Okay? Now, even though the dollar in itself is nothing really, but what does it represent? Business. Business. So that's prohibited. Go ahead, Shoshana.
If you're sorting things, like that would be a non-Sabbath thing. It would be because you're saying something's good and something's not exactly bad, but something goes in one category and the other is not as good. You're making decisions. Sorting is work. But I'm trying to figure out.
When you're sorting your socks, for example. You did laundry and you're sorting your socks and you want to pull out 2 socks, you could do that on the Sabbath. You're allowed to take 2 socks from a laundry bin. You may do that. What you may not do is the laundry. You cannot do the laundry on the Sabbath. Why can you not do the laundry on the Sabbath? Because washing is prohibited. Washing laundry, not washing your face. That you can do. But washing laundry is prohibited on the Sabbath because it's work. It's part of the work. And therefore, lighting a fire, you couldn't do. Why can't you light a fire? Because they burned incense in the temple. Not only can you not light the fire, but you can't extinguish a fire. Because why? They put out the fire in the temple. So you have those 2 things you have to worry about. Okay? So they came up with 39 laws. 39 became 39,000, and there's a whole book like this thick of do's and don'ts on the Sabbath. Now, let's leave this for a moment. These are all the don'ts. We're not going to get through all the don'ts tonight, don't worry. This takes us weeks and months and years to get through them. Let's go now to the do's, because now we talk about sanctifying. It doesn't say that in the verse, right? You shall sanctify the Sabbath. Okay? Now I want you to put your hats on. I want you to stop thinking negatively now. Okay? Till now you were thinking all negative thoughts here. All right? Okay? I want you to start thinking positively. Now here it's going to be a little bit different, a little more difficult, because before at least, you had some kind of an inkling what work is. I want you to come up with an idea of what it would mean to sanctify the day. Besides not only not working and resting, but what it would be something to do that we can sanctify the day of Sabbath. Okay? As a mother of 2 little children. Am I right? What do you think we can do to sanctify the Sabbath? Good, good. Teaching. Very good.
Without picking them up.
What?
Without picking them up.
You can pick them up inside. You can pick them up inside now so you can throw them. But no. What?
I'm going to honey that too.
I'm sorry.
Who's her mother?
I'm sorry.
Who's her mother? Did you know who her mother is? No? Oh, okay. All right. Corliss. Sanctification. To sanctify. Something positive.
Pray.
Ah, okay. Very good. Sherry.
I don't know.
What? Think about something you could do about something that would sanctify the day. It is not so easy. If you want to pass, you can pass. If so,
I'll pass.
pass. Victor.
So now I don't know if this comes under praying or not, but I thought before they wrote down the Talmud, they'd have to, it was an oral tradition, so.
Study.
Study. Yeah.
Study. Very good. Okay.
Lighting candles.
Lighting candles. Okay, that's very good. Now, we know that that is something that we do, but I want to go back to that just in a minute, before, as we go around the room, lighting candles. Because that did not come up initially. Of course, in the original keeping the Sabbath, we did not have any candle lighting at all. That came out much, much, much later. Only in the times of the Talmud did we light candles. Let me talk to that before we go on to the next step. Why did we light candles? Think about this for a second, because it was exactly sanctification of the Sabbath. It's a very, very good point. You know why? There was no electricity. So what happened most nights when the Jews were living, and especially in the Middle Ages when you're very poor, what happens at night? It's completely dark. That's it. You blow out the candles, you go to bed. On the Sabbath, they said no. So many times when people were really poor, they even ate by moonlight. You didn't have enough money to buy candles. You ate by the moonlight. You had nothing to, no illumination in the house. On Friday night, they said no. Because of remembering the Sabbath to sanctify it and to make it special, we would light Shabbos candles for peace in the home. Because if it's dark, then you trip over somebody, you knock somebody out, you puncture a hole in a Picasso with your elbow. I mean, you can do a lot of different things that you could make mistakes. So lighting candles came out of that tradition. Now, even though today, go ahead. No, this was way before the Middle Ages.
Okay.
This was way back in the Talmud times.
Yeah.
But just going through the times of when Jews were dirt poor. You know, today, who cares? We have light, we have plenty of things that we can illuminate, but we never lost that special idea and tradition of lighting candles. So that's something, a positive thing that we do to sanctify the day and to make it special. Shoshana.
Well, if there's parents and their children, parents blessing
Blessing the children. Very good. Carol.
I can't think, drawing a blank.
Okay, no problem, pass. Paul.
Teaching the kids.
Teaching, okay? Teaching, we have a double teaching, okay? And me, I'm a practical guy. I love to eat, okay? I love it, love it, love it. You probably don't notice on me, but I really, really love to eat. You know, but even though I keep my girlish figure, you know, like that. What I would say is to sanctify it, of course, would be special foods. You know, so if every day we're going to eat, let's say, vegetables, on Saturday we would upgrade. We would go, what's the next step up? We'd have fish if we couldn't afford anything else. So on Sabbath, we would do everything I could in order to save. So I would deny myself on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I would save the few extra dollars so on the Sabbath I could have some extra, something else, some special foods. And going within the special food category, over the years, there was one special kind of food that became very important within Judaism. We always use this food before any celebration, and that would be? What? Thank you very much. Say that again, Corliss. Wine. That would be wine. Now, chal is good too, but wine goes before anything, right? Think about a chuppah. When we're standing under the chuppah, we take a cup of wine. When we make havdalah separation, we do it over a cup of wine. We have a bris, a circumcision, we make the blessings over a cup of wine. Why? Because wine lightens and lifts the heart up. So the first thing we're going to do on the Sabbath is we're going to sanctify it by getting stoned. No, by getting drunk I meant, not getting stoned. Special foods and especially wine. So the two most important things that we come out of this, if we have no other money, we're down to nothing. What are the two things we want to save for? We talked about right now two very important mitzvahs, and this is what we talk about practical Judaism. So if there's going to be two things that you're going to do on the Sabbath and nothing else, that means you're going to use the Saturday to go watch football, and you're a football fanatic, and this doesn't mean anything to you that we talked about this evening. But there's two mitzvahs. What are the two things you're going to buy? Thank you very much. Candles and wine. Those are the two. And even Maimonides says if you only break it down into candles or wine, You get that there's a hierarchy, and candles for Hanukkah and candles for Shabbos, what should go before precedent, which one you should do. But here in America, thank God we have enough for both. So if you're going to do nothing else, you start off the day by lighting the candles. That sanctifies the day when it comes in, and the cup of wine sanctifies the day when it's in already, because the candles must be lit before the Sabbath. Can't light the candles on the Sabbath because we came to the conclusion that no lighting is permitted, right? We said striking a match is prohibited, so we light the candles before, and then we actually make the cup of wine, blessing on the cup of wine.
Is that why I see sometimes people cover their eyes when they're lighting the candles?
Yes, yes. That's a very good question. That became a custom that when women light the candles, they want to concentrate and they want to push out any distraction and use that minute or 2 or 3 for asking health, wealth, the good cheer, whatever it is, children, whatever they need. That is a very, very appropriate time for asking your bequests of God. And that's why they cover their eyes, in order to concentrate and and then once they open their eyes, the first thing they see is the candles, and they get the pleasure of the candles, and they get the benefit of the candles. So therefore that adds two things. One, it gives you an opportunity to concentrate when you make the blessing, and 2 is to gain the benefit of the candles right away. Since you made a blessing to thank God for giving us light, you want to be able to use the light as well, and opening your eyes will allow you to use the light as well. And that's why they cover their eyes. Now, so now we've come to the conclusion after reading this that 1, we need to have a body of people making decisions straight from the Bible itself. We would be completely confused. There's no way we can keep the Sabbath unless there's an organized way to do it, and that's why we have a Sanhedrin. That's why we had a body of people, 71 rabbis, that would write all the decisions and do everything in order for us to be able to keep the Sabbath. Now, comes along, so on the sanctification part, so let's go through a Sabbath, what we have to do now that we're living in the United States of America. So you want to make sure that before Sabbath comes along, all your lights that you need are on. So your bathroom light is on. Now, what are you going to do if you invite over a guest and, most people don't care, but not that they don't care, but they're just not conscious. Everybody closes the lights, so we get these little things that they sell now in hardware stores all over New York that you place over the light switch. So in order for your guests not to mistakenly close the light, otherwise it's going to be very sad. If he closes the light, can you open the light? No. So it means at 3 o'clock in the morning, if you're my age and you have to make a run for it, you're running in the dark. Okay? So be very careful to keep a light open in the bathroom. So if let's say you need a light in the living room, you open. Now thank God that we do have timers. So you don't have to waste. You don't have to waste. And my job, when I was a kid in Montreal, one of my jobs was before Shabbos, I made sure that all the timers were in their proper place, set up and go on at 4, go off at 10, go on at 3 in the afternoon, all of that stuff. You had to organize all of that. Okay? So you're coming into the house, you've opened up all the lights you're going to need. Now, what about food? Okay? We agreed that we can't cook, right? You can't cook. So what are you going to eat only cold food? No, God forbid. We do all the cooking before Sabbath. So if we want to have chicken that night, we cook it before the Sabbath and keep it warm in the oven. But we have to turn off the oven or turn it down or whatever, make sure it doesn't cook on the Sabbath. Or like we have a cholent every Saturday afternoon. You come here to services, right afterwards we have a hot steaming pot of, I don't know what it is. It is all different kinds of stuff in that crock pot. We call it cholent. It's no problem as long as it was cooking before Sabbath. If it cooked on the Sabbath, no good. But if it was cooking before, no problem. Okay? So you make sure that in your house at 4:30, let's say Sabbath begins at 4:30, your lights are on, your stove is cooking already. That means, you have all your pots on there, all your chicken in the oven, you have everything made. And then you go and light candles. Because once the candles are lit, supposedly, you have to stop everything you're doing. Go ahead, Shoshana.
On the refrigerator, the only thing I can think of is to put a burned out bulb in it, because it's not okay to just keep the bulb a little unscrewed because the moisture will get into the socket. That doesn't seem okay.
Well, the thing is, what you have to do with the light bulb on the refrigerator is turn it off. Right? Turn off the light bulb in your refrigerator, because what happens is, most refrigerators, when you open the door, what you're doing is turning on the light bulb. You take it and you unscrew it.
But the moisture will get in there.
You
Oh,
can,
no moisture, no,
you
you
can
don't have
put
to
tape
worry.
over the buttons so that
Or you
it
can put,
stays there.
thank you very much, Victor. You put tape over the button. There's a number of different ways, but you've got to be careful. I mean, we're getting right now into real particulars over here. I didn't want to go that particular tonight, but since we brought it up, okay? So you have to worry about opening the light in your refrigerator too. All right? So it's an interesting thing. That's why I say it's not for one night.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
So how is it okay to use a timer to turn your lights on?
Well, you don't do it. You're not doing it.
No, I know, but
Anything-
but when you
anything that
open
you-
the fridge,
You've done it. See, your action, you're opening the fridge, is actually turning on the light bulb. Plugging in electricity before Sabbath, that's you're done. You're gone. Now, what happens throughout the house, that's not your business. It can go on, it can go off, because you're not doing it. Because everything you did already was done before the Sabbath. So you're okay on that aspect. Now,
So a timer in an oven's okay too then?
a timer in an oven is a little bit more difficult. You could have a timer in an
to
oven
go
to
off.
turn it.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I meant.
Yes. A timer in an oven to turn off is okay. A timer in an oven to turn on is not okay, because you can't cook even if you're not doing the cooking. But if the food is being cooked on the Sabbath, you cannot eat from it. So, you know what? There were times that, because we're not in our own home, we put up the cholent, it cooks, we finish services on Friday night, we leave, we ask the security guard to come and close the door. He does us a big favor. He sees a pot on the floor cooking, he unplugs it. I come in the morning, I get, I want to, because now there's nothing you could do. You can't even call him back and say, hey, you know what, I want you to re-plug it in, because what are you going to do at that point? You're going to re-cook it. So I remember one time I told this story. I was once the guest speaker at a certain Chabad house down in Laguna. So in Laguna, I went down, me and Chani stayed at the hotel right next to the Chabad house. And I was considered the scholar in resident at that place. And the rabbi worked hard. Friday afternoon, he called me and he said, look at this cholent. Oh, this cholent. A cholent, by the way, so for those not familiar with the term, is kind of a hodgepodge. It's like a goulash. Are you familiar with the term goulash? Okay, so this cholent, it had a big crock pot like this. He had meat, and he had kishka, and he had potatoes. Oh, and two big ones. He said, tomorrow afternoon, after your speech, we're going to sit down with some cholent. It's going to be like heaven. Well, guess what happened? That night he called in a crew to clean up, and they did him a big favor by unplugging the cholent, because they thought, they're finished eating, so they unplugged the cholent. So all the whole meat and the kishka, we couldn't, Okay, I got over it. It took me about 6-7 months to get over not eating that cholent, but nonetheless, we lived through it. So now on Shabbos, so you know that in your house, you got to have the lights on, the food cooking already, and everything you want to be done, because electricity only came into the past 100 years. Who had electricity before 100 years ago? Nobody. So the rabbis had to debate over and over. How do you deal with electricity? Is it prohibited? Is it permitted? Could we use electricity? Could you not use electricity? Finally, they came to the conclusion, no, you can't use electricity. And that caused all different kinds of hardships. Like now, for give you an example, we mentioned before that you have to use timers. Why can't you open up the refrigerator door? Because the light bulb is going to go on. And every time you cause an action to happen, it's prohibited. You ever try going to a hospital? How do you get into a hospital? What? The doors are no more. It used to be manual doors. Today there's no manual doors at a hospital. Everything is electrical. It's automated. So you have to get into the hospital. What are you going to do? That's it. Thank you very much. So you stand there like a dope, waiting. And as soon as someone else comes in, you run in behind them, okay? Because they did it, and you run in behind them, right? Okay, now you come to an elevator. Can you use an elevator? No, because why? Because you have to push the button. But what happens if, theoretically, you went into the elevator, you had to go to the 9th floor, and you knew that this person, you overheard him saying, he's going to the 9th floor. Can you use the elevator even if you didn't push the button? No, you're absolutely correct. Why? Because the mere fact that you're in the elevator is causing the motor to work harder. And you have to, now, they came with an ingenious thing in recent years. They have what is called a Shabbos elevator. What's a Shabbos elevator? An elevator that automatically stops at every single floor. Okay? So you get in there, and it goes to 2 stops, 3 stops, 4 stops. And that way you can use a Shabbos elevator. Because you're not pushing the button, it's not working harder because of you, it's not doing anything because of you, it's just going to every single floor, and rabbis debated it back and forth. They said, okay, no problem. No problem. Fine, you could do it. Now, the only problem is, I think, that the elevator will work. I'm not sure myself how it goes. Maybe it's just you go in there and automatically goes up and down. I'm not sure. But if you happen to catch it going the wrong way, you could be in big trouble, right? Because if you are on the 4th floor and you want to go to the 18th floor, but then it's going down, so you have to go from 4 to 3 to 2 to basement, then the basement to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, then all the way up. It's a complicated geschäft, but it's around. But it's not forget about the Shabbos elevator. So now, what do you do next? Now you want to go to temple because you have your food cooking, you're ready for supper when you get back. You have all the lights are in the house, are done already. You have everything, the timer's in. Now forget about the driving. I don't want to get into that because that's already too complicated because most people drive and God bless them. But if you were in an Orthodox community, you would walk. You would walk to shul on Shabbos. Okay? What are you going to do before you step out of the house? When on Shabbos you go out, do not carry things about. Right? Because you can't carry. So you're going to go through all of your pockets and make sure there's nothing in there, right? Every pocket you go through, okay? Because there's plenty of times I've been outside and I've got, oh my gosh, look what I have in my pocket. Now if you have something in your pocket, you can't carry it. So you got to put it to the side. But if it's a $100 bill, you don't want to put it to the side. So there's other rules. Talk to me after the class. I'll tell you what to do.
What about locking your door?
Yeah.
Oh, the excellent question, Victor. So you lock the door, you can't carry the keys. So you know what you have? One of the things which are permitted on the Sabbath are clothes, thank God. You're allowed to wear clothes, okay? So anything that because I would be carrying, we shouldn't laugh because maybe some ingenious rabbi is going to say, hey, you know what? Clothes are carrying, and no, that would be very sad. Okay, very, very sad. That wouldn't work. So what do? So everything that's a piece of clothing is permitted. So now, you may argue, but you don't need that many pieces of clothing. You wear an undershirt, then you have tzitzis, then you have a shirt and a jacket, and if you're in Montreal, you have a coat and a scarf and a hat and earmuffs and boots. So someone may say, hey, nah, that's too much. No. Anything that would be considered clothing is permitted. What about a belt? You need a belt, right? Because to keep your pants up if you don't have the belt. So what do is, they make what is called a Shabbos belt for keys. They take the keys, okay, here. You take your set of keys that you're going to need, okay? You see this hole over here? You take a piece of string, tie it one way. Take another piece of string, tie it this way. Then you turn the string around, you tie it to your waist, and then you got yourself a belt that has the key in it. Now, it can't be hanging from the belt. The key's got to be part of the belt. That's why I say to you, piece of string one way and a piece of string the other way. So the key's actually part of the belt. Because if you just took a piece of string and put it through the key and tied it around, what would that mean? You're just carrying the key. So you got to be smart. Okay? So, but Victor had a good question about the keys because many people you walk around in New York, they have keys hanging from their chests. And you think to yourself, my God, what the heck is that? Now, what about jewelry? Jewelry is that good? So it says for a woman, yes. But a guy wearing an earring, no. Because that's not part of the makeup in traditional Judaism. So many women wearing a brooch, what's it called, a brooch? A brooch? You bring a brooch outside, used to put the key as part of the brooch. So to make the key part of the brooch. So they wore it over here. You see many women have like a key with a nice design around it, and that's okay because for a woman, that's part of clothing. For a man would wear that, would be no good. You can't do that because it's extra. So you would clean everything out of your pockets, make sure everything is out, the keys wrapped around your thing, and you're off to shul. You go to shul. Okay? You come home from shul, you open up the door, you come inside, then you're ready to sanctify the day. You have the wine ready, you have the challah ready. Now, how many challahs are we going to have on the table? 2. You're going to have 2 challahs on the table. Why 2 challahs? Because the challah started, Shoshana brought it up before, what did we eat in the desert? You remember when you went to Hebrew school? What did the Jews eat? Man. How did they get the manna? Every day they collected it, except on one day. Which day? The Sabbath. So how would they eat? They'd get 2 portions on Friday. The 2 portions on Friday are the 2 challahs. So you'd have the 2 challahs right there. But if you're doing this correctly, what you would do is before making the kiddush, you would cover over the challahs with a little challah cover. Why cover over the challahs, you may ask? Because the challahs are jealous. Why are you sanctifying the day with wine? What's wrong? What do we eat? Cheese, chopped liver? We're challahs. We're important too. We want to be sanctified. So you cover the challahs in order not to embarrass them. All right? Don't ask me. I know you're all looking like, what? Okay? Just trust me. Just trust me on this. So you got the wine, you got the cup, you got the challahs, they're covered over. You come home, first thing you do is you make the kiddush over the wine, because that's the number one deal of sanctifying the day. Then you go wash your hands, because we wash our hands before eating. You cut one of the challahs. It's supposed to be 2 whole challahs, not 2 sliced challahs, 2 whole ones, because that gives them some kind of personality, where if it's all cut up, who wants cut up challahs? You cut up the challahs, you give it to everybody, but before you eat it, what you're going to do is you're going to have a little dish of salt, and you're going to touch the challah into the salt. Why the salt? Because everything that's on the table is a remembrance to the service back when, and every sacrifice had to be brought with salt. So we have salt on the table, and every time we eat the challah, we dunk it into the salt a couple of times and eat it. Now, if the doctor told you, don't eat salt, don't be a chacham, don't be a wise guy and go against the doctor's wishes, just touch it very lightly, even shake it off, and then you eat the challah. Go ahead, Shoshana.
Well, obviously you can wear clothing for yourself, but you can't wear an extra item to bring for somebody else that you have in mind to wear an extra thing that obviously isn't for you. I mean, it's not for yourself.
You could do that. Sure, for
example. I was
example.
criticized because a girl put on a few extra sweaters because the kids were cold and brought them to shul by kept wearing them.
Okay, but you know what? That would be like kind of a gray area. But if I would say to you, like, you know what? I know that you need a raincoat in shul, and I would put on 1 raincoat for me to bring it to you, there'd be no problem for that. Absolutely no problem in doing that. As a matter of fact, you know what? You could even wear a couple. You could wear a sweater, a jacket, and a raincoat, even though you may not need it. Glasses, for example. You don't need glasses, but it's part of the deal, you know. And so wearing 6 sweaters may be stretching the rule a little bit, maybe not in the spirit of the rule, but certainly 1 sweater for somebody else is not a problem. It would not be a problem. Then for food on the Sabbath, we all know that there are very special types of food. 2 types of food that you should have, and I'm sorry if you're vegetarian, is fish and meat. Basar v'dogim v'chol matamim, it says. Fish and meat and all different types of delicacies. So delicacies include kugel, whatever else your heart desires, string beans, kishka, chopped liver, herring, whatever you want. How you're going to eat it is like this. First, you're going to eat the fish. That's why we always have the first course is going to be what kind of fish? Now, I want to ask you a question. Okay, now Shoshana, I don't want you to answer this. Okay? Don't answer this question. I want to ask you, has everybody here heard of gefilte fish? Raise your hand if you haven't heard of gefilte fish. Okay. Gefilte fish is the first course. What is gefilte fish? Anybody know? What? No one knows. No one knows. It's like, paraphernalia. You know what paraphernalia is? No one knows what that word means, paraphernalia. But what is gefilte fish? You know what it is? It's primarily fish without bones. That's the key. It's fish that they've taken all the bones out, they've grinded it down, put in a lot of challah, a lot of eggs, a lot of oil. It tastes like gefilte fish. Okay? Like I once bought a jar at Vaughn's, and the kid that checked me out actually asked me, do people eat that? Because he's seen it on the shelves, but he can't believe that people actually buy it to eat it. He thought it was like an ornament you hang up like when on Christmas, you'd put up like Christians have those stockings and we hang up gefilte fish. Mistletoe. It's if you don't want someone kissing you, you hang up the gefilte fish. All right, that's what gefilte fish does. It repels people away from you. Okay, so why do we have gefilte fish, you may ask? Who came up with this ingenious thing of gefilte fish? Why? Because one of the prohibitions on the Sabbath, though we didn't go all through all 39, is choosing. Boirer. You can't choose between good and bad. Don't ask me why, because that was part of the process of building. So what happens is if you have bones, what you're going to automatically do is you're going to start picking out the bones of the fish, which you're not allowed to do. So it became a huge pain of eating fish on Shabbos, because what you had to do is first take the bones into your mouth and then take them out. That they allowed. But sitting on the plate itself, you couldn't pick the bones out. They said, okay, this is crazy. So some ingenious person, I think it was Thomas Edison's mother, who said, you know what? No, it wasn't Thomas Edison's mother. I know you're thinking of me now. He wasn't even Jewish. Okay? But some lady like that took the fish, grinded it up, and we have no more problem left. That's why we have gefilte fish. Because it all started, there's an old expression, necessity is the mother of all inventions. Okay, so we had to figure out how to get around the gefilte, get around the bones in the fish, but you could still serve bones with fish. Don't get me wrong. If you go to many houses, they serve salmon and carp and other things which have bones in them, but primarily have the gefilte fish. Then you have something to drink. Afterwards, you go on to the meat. And whatever, chicken, meat, whatever, kogel, then the rest of it, then now you clean off the table. And you could only rinse the dishes. You can't wash them, Therefore, you have to just keep them in the dishwasher till tomorrow night or whatever. Some people use disposables. I'm not too big keen on disposables because it's Sabbath. You want to do it. So you rinse them off, put them away, and then the next night you wash the dishes. You go to sleep or you study, because we had a whole bunch of good things to do, right? We had teaching and prayer and study, and all of those are part of the sanctification of the day. Everything except about thinking of work. And that is the hardest thing not to do on the Sabbath, is not to think about what greets you as soon as the sun comes down on Saturday night. So if you're in a big deal or you own stock, you know how much you have to refrain from picking up the LA Times and not looking at the stock report? Now, I want to guarantee you that there's many Orthodox Jews that read the stock report on the Sabbath, because there's no particular prohibition against reading the paper. Okay, it's not Shabbos dick, as we call it. It's not part of the spirit of Sabbath, but there's no real prohibition against it. So people read this, even though you're not supposed to, and this and that, but they do it. What about talking about stocks on the Sabbath? You shouldn't. There's no prohibition against it. That's why you'll have in certain shuls the stock picking section. Okay? Because in most Orthodox shuls, when you join up as a member, they give you a little flyer, a questionnaire, where you would like to sit. Would you like to sit in the stock section of people that talk about stocks? Would you like to speak in the sports section of people that only talk sports? Would you like to sit in the gossip section? Would you like a seat where you can see the rabbi? Extra is a seat where you can't see the rabbi. Because in case you want to fall asleep during his sermons, it doesn't, bro. Do you want to have a section where you can see the women? Cost extra. Because in an Orthodox shul, there's a separation of men and women. A seat where your wife couldn't see you. All of these things are very important when you join an Orthodox temple. I'm just joking, but someone just sent me this recently, Rosh Hashanah seating. It was tremendously funny. It was hilarious. All of these. But that's what happens, you see. Because what happens is that people that have kept Shabbos their whole lives are not as careful as about the sanctification, even though they'll never carry. Oh, God forbid, they won't catch them dead carrying a handkerchief on the street. But they won't be so careful about not reading the sports section, or not reading the stock section, or not talking about things on Shabbos like business. Oh, you know what, right up. So therefore, that's done only because it becomes mechanical. See, as soon as the mitzvahs become mechanical and you start doing them because I did it last week or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, then it's over. Then the Sabbath loses its soul. And the whole idea is to take it with all of its sanctity and to love it. But that's not our problem. I mean, our problem is that we just need to just get to step number one. Now, why I brought this up is because I think that it's very, very, very important that we do something on the Sabbath. Even though I know with all practical purposes, not everybody here is ready to take on all 39 or 3,900 or 39,000 and stop watching TV, no emails. That was a great one, especially today. But how many people are willing to stop, just unhook your computer? Not many people are willing to do that, unless you're orthodox and very, very strict. But there should be, and I think this is so important for the sanctity of one's life, not only the sanctity of the day, is to do something on the Sabbath that is different than the rest of the week. Whether that's only lighting a Sabbath candle. And if you have a daughter, having her light the Sabbath candle. If she's over 3 years, she should have her own candle. Or making Kiddush. Just Friday night, think about this for a second. How beautiful it is when you sit around the table and it's only your family and there's no phones ringing and there's no TV playing and there's no computer on and there's no internet to worry about and there's no Blackberries and there's no emails to answer and there's nothing there. It's only you and your family. Now, I'm not saying that's good for every family, because some families are better off not being around each other. But I'm saying for most families, if you think about it, this will save you hundreds of thousands of hours of therapy. I'm telling you, thousands of hours of therapy because we don't talk to each other. Today as Americans, we are so busy with work and this, and we're overloaded with so many things, we don't have time for family and friends. So if you're not married, what if you're not married? You have nobody? You invite over a friend and you have a beautiful Friday night dinner, just the two of you, or the three of you, or the four of you, or the six of you, or whoever it is. That, my friends, is priceless. And I'm telling you, that should be a advertisement on television. Gefilte fish, $2.99. Chicken, $3.99. Wine, $14.95. Spending time with people you love, priceless. Priceless. Think about that. You know what I think that's going to be? You know when we have a new shul, I think that's going to be on a big sign right in front. You know, gefilte fish $2.99. Spending time with people you love, priceless. Don't come here. Go home. No. So that's what Friday night is all about. That's what turning in. When we say, when our slogan for the not only ours but it's around the whole world is turn Friday night into Shabbos. What we mean by that is that when God said sanctification, He meant different. That we literally become different people. And one thing that wasn't mentioned here, in all of the things that we talked about on the positive end, we talked about teaching, blessing the children, prayer, study, lighting the candle, special food, also special clothes. You know why special clothes? Because when you put on fine clothes, right? Don't you remember when you were a kid and you had to go to a party and your mother would dress you up in the finest, you felt different. To me, I felt different. When I had to wear a suit and a tie and I had to go somewhere to a bar mitzvah or to a party, you just felt different. You felt like $1 million when wearing that suit and that tie and the new shoes. Especially before Passover. Before Passover was a time when everybody got everything new. You got new shoes, new socks, new underwear, new shirts, new suit. You felt like $1 billion. Even though we didn't have $1 billion, we didn't have $1 million, we didn't even have $100,000. But when you walked out, you felt like a real human being. And I tell you that Friday, we didn't even talk about this. Because in the olden days, who showered every day? No one. You showered, once in a blue moon. That's where the expression is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Why? Because the bathwater was so filthy. Because people took a bath maybe once a month, maybe, and they would get into the bath, and by the time everybody used the bath, you couldn't find the baby anymore, right? So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater was an expression because it wasn't facetious. Today it's a shower, 2 showers, 5 showers a day. It doesn't make a difference. But on Friday, people were specially careful to take a shower and clean themselves. So when they walked into that day, when Friday night came and you put on your special Shabbos clothes and you were clean and you were looking forward and you knew that nothing is going to bother you that night. No matter you owed the bank and your mortgage payment was late and this and that, it didn't matter. Because you sat around the table and you felt like a king and your wife felt like a queen and your children felt like princes and princesses, and that was all that mattered in the entire world. What better is than that? What better feeling in the entire world is there? Because you know what? I'm telling you that if you believe this to be true, you know what happens? It's true. It's true. And on Friday night, if you put away your phones and you unhook your computer and you close the television and you sit around for an hour having a meal and don't let anybody interrupt you and just listen and talk to the people you love, I promise you your week will go completely different. Your week will be 100% different. No ands, if, or buts. And then when you finish a big meal, you know what you're ready for? Yes. And that we all agreed is a good thing on Shabbos. That we all agreed is a good thing on Shabbos. Which brings me to the second point of, oh my gosh, it's 9:15 already? No. Okay. We'll have a few more minutes, all right? Can we go a few more minutes? Okay. Because I want to talk about the Jewish home. We talked about the Sabbath and how beautiful it is and how wonderful it is. Also, practical guide to Judaism demands of us that when someone walks into a Jewish home, you know what? You know it's a Jewish home. Now, what are some of the things we're going to find in a Jewish home? Okay, so let's take a walk down the street and go visit 1031 Amelia Avenue, which is the home of the Perelmuters. Okay? Now you're looking, you don't know which is 1031. The first thing that's going to designate my house is going to be the mezuzah hanging on the front door. Now, where is it always placed? On the right-hand side. Now, what is a mezuzah? In America, people are confused. Unfortunately, because of their ignorance, they believe that the cover is the mezuzah. So they spend $30, $40, $50, $60 on a fancy cover, and they don't put anything inside of it. That's not the mezuzah. The mezuzah is a scroll that's wrapped up very, very thinly. It's written very carefully by a scribe, just the way we write the Torah. Exactly the same way, on the same parchment, the same ink. It's wrapped up, covered with some saran wrap, and then placed in a cover. But that's what the mezuzah is. The mezuzah is the scroll, not the covering. And you take the cover and the scroll, and you always put it on the right-hand side, 2/3 of the way up. Just high enough for your hand to be able to reach it, on a slant. Why on a slant? Because a lot of the things that I've mentioned to you came orally. Now, orally, there's one very big problem when we transmit things orally. And you know what that is? What is that? Confusion. Because if I tell someone a secret here, and it goes around the room, and I say Bugs Black Blood. I love to play this game with my two grandsons. One's 4 and one's 2. And I said, let's play broken telephone. I always say the same thing, Bugs Black Blood. Because that's almost impossible for a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old to say. Especially if you say it 3 times, Bug Black Blood. Blah, 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 blah. You know it? Okay? So I transmit this back and forth around the room. We play broken telephone. Some things are going to get confused. I say put up the mezuzah on the right-hand side. You're going to hear put up the malula on the right side. And you don't know what it is. And then you go 1, 2, 3. So therefore, we kind of lost the tradition. Should it be vertical or should it be horizontal? So there's different opinions. So to satisfy both opinions, what do? We put it on a slant. Okay? And it's always in like this. So not like this. It doesn't face outwards. It always faces towards the house. So your mezuzah is going to lay like this. And there's always, on every mezuzah, there's a shin. You're going to see on the outside, why the shin? For God's name, Shaddai. Because God is protecting this house. So you have the mezuzah laying like this, and you know it's a Jewish home. When you open up the door, you kiss the mezuzah, and you train your children also to kiss the mezuzah, and we come in. Now, if you're going to go to the kitchen, there's not really much difference except the 2 sinks and all of these little notes on the post-its. This is dairy, this is milk, this is dairy, this is this. What else are you going to find in a Jewish home? Okay? So now we're going to put on back our thinking caps. I don't want anybody to know it's getting late at night and it's been a long, long, long day. But I want you to think hard for 10 seconds. I want to go through. What are we going to find in a Jewish home? Is everybody familiar with a charity box? Of course, J&F. Okay? Now, all of these things, which are very important because you walk into a Jewish home, I would say, not to belittle any of these, but probably one of the most important is the charity box. Why? Because that's something you do on a daily basis. See, a menorah, which is beautiful, you do how many times a year? Once on Hanukkah, right? Kiddush cup is once a week. Kosher wine you drink every day if you want to get stone drunk. No. A Seder plate, once a year. Havdalah candle once a week. Candlesticks once a week. Dreidels once a year. But a charity box, every day. Every day. And that's got to be prominent. So when people walk in, they see that charity box. And you remember it to drop a nickel or a dime or whatever it is in that charity box every day. Now, one of the most important is the first thing that was said. Jewish books. Now, why are Jewish books important? I happen to have a liking to Jewish books. I have a few of them in my house. Just a few. I'm a bookaholic. If there's anything that I spend on, it's books. I love them. Maybe I'm a wannabe scholar. That's probably. And I think that if I surround myself with enough books, I'll know it by osmosis. I mean, like it'll just flow into my mind and it's gonna be there. Why Jewish books are important? Do you know why? Because, God forbid, this could happen. I don't wish on anybody, but one day you might open one of them. Okay? That means one day you're going to be sitting over there and you'll be like, it's like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you're home from work and there's, you've eaten dinner or you've eaten lunch and now the kids are taking a nap and you're sitting there and you're looking at the books and by God, you have an actual urge to open one of the books. Now, this probably would lead to an intervention. You could call me and I'll stop you, okay? Or you could call, your a friend or your counselor, or there's a 12-step program for this. You could do all of those things. But if none of that works and you actually walk over to the bookshelf, you will take out a book and you'll open it up and by golly, you'll start reading it. And then you'll like it. And this becomes habit forming. And maybe every once in a while, every day for 2 or 3 minutes in the morning, you'll actually read part of what's going on in Jewish history. And then you'll know when I say to you about the parsha, the story of Korach, you won't say to me, who? What kind of disease are you talking about, Rabbi? Who's Korach and what's Korach? No, you'll know because you've read the story and you'll know the story. That can only happen, you know when? When you have the books. If you don't have the books, it's never going to happen. Now, there are some people that go on the internet and do research and go and read Jewish articles. Yes, that's true. But there's nothing to me like having an actual book in front of you. I mean, I get sent so many different things from the internet by everyone in the congregation, things that I'm going to read every single article that ever came out. I can't stand reading an article on the computer. I hate it. You have to scroll and I get confused. It's up and down. So what I do is with a good article, I print it. And I have it on a piece of paper. And at my leisure, I can then go and sit at my desk and read the article. And then if I want to make notes, it's very hard on the computer to make notes. I tried with whiteout, but didn't work. It didn't work. So I take it there and I start scratching up the paper and I make my little notes and squiggly things and all of that stuff. That's why it's important in a Jewish home. Mezuzah, charity box on the kitchen table or whatever it is, Jewish books in the living room, next to it a Jewish place where you have a menorah, a spice box, Havdalah candle, dreidels, Kiddush cup, kosher wine, everything. Why? Because all of these things tells us that we are connected. All of these connect us to our heritage. Think about this. And Hanukkah that's coming up in a month, if you have a menorah and you light a menorah in your house, you've done something that 14 million Jews, well, let's not exaggerate, not everybody's lighting the menorah, but a good percentage, millions of Jews around the world are doing exactly the same thing you're doing. Think about that. You've connected with millions of people, and we don't need an internet. We've done this for 3,000 years. We've lit the menorah. Not 3,000, 2,500 years. We've lit the menorah. So when you think about that, the power of this, the awesomeness of feeling that you're not alone. You're with millions of people around the world at this very same time, at the same moment, lighting that menorah. You're connected. You're part of something. There's a heritage. There's a legacy. There's a history. There's a community. That's a powerful thing for me. Very, very, very powerful. And that menorah reminds you every single day of the message of the candles. So when you walk by a shofar's another thing somebody could have in the house. It's not that expensive. You go out, you buy a little shofar, you put it in the cabinet or whatever. It reminds you of all of these wonderful, wonderful things that we do throughout the year. And that pretty much makes a Jewish home. Because if you go into someone's bedroom, you're not going to, find anything special. You have the mezuzah on the door going into the bedroom because you're supposed to have a mezuzah on all the doorposts in your house. But itself, you have to yarmulkes. Maybe you have a couple of kippas in your house. Some people have that. But those are the things that make us proud of, remind us of our heritage. Those are the things that keep us going on a daily basis. Because out in the world, no one cares. You walk outside today, you think anybody cares? They don't care. But we know that we do care. We care about our Yiddishkeit. We care about where we come from. And all of these things are a reminder of how beautiful and how wonderful our religion is. And to remind ourselves every single day. Now, in the Jewish books, I would have to give you a hierarchy of what I think the order should go. You've got to have a prayer book. Have to have a prayer book. Someone ends up in the hospital, you want to say a prayer. Instead of calling me, Rabbi, what should I do? You have a prayer book. Just crack it open and say a prayer. So number 1, prayer book. Number 2, Bible. Hebrew and English. You got to have the Hebrew. Even though you don't know how to read the Hebrew, one day you'll learn. So you got to have a Bible. Now don't get the King James Version. I know that they sell it in Barnes and Nobles and get it on that we don't want the King James Version, all right? It has too many commentaries in the back. It has too many commentaries in the back of the book for us. You know what I'm talking about, okay? All right? So you want a Jewish Bible, Hebrew and English, okay? Then you want a book of Psalms. Why? Because you have to read them. Because if, let's say you're very tense, you're just laid off. Tragedy. People go through that experience. Or you had a very, very bad encounter at work. Whatever it is, you're CEO of a big company, and they just found out that you were backdating your options. And this should happen to all of us. This should happen to all of us, that we should be accused of backdating our options. And instead of making 1.3 billion, we walked away with 1.6 billion. Okay? You're going to need a book of Psalms. Okay? You're going to need, because you're going to crack open the book. And if you say, Rabbi, which Psalms? So I'm going to tell you a little hint. Figure out your age. If, let's say, you're 50 years old, you say Psalm 51. Always 1 year ahead. If you're 40, you say Psalm 41. So whatever age you are, every day, you want to be reading your Psalm. So if you're 26, what Psalm are you going to read? 27. Very good. If you're 111, you read a Psalm 112. Okay? It's going to be very bad when you hit 118. Because 119 is a huge, long, very long psalm. But besides that, these 3 books are the most important books that you could have in your house. Because one of these days you're going to crack open the Bible. Now you want more? Knock yourself out. You want to buy Wiesel's books, you want to buy history books, you want to buy Kabbalistic books, whatever you want. The more the merrier. But these 3 got to be a chak v'lo yaver. Has to be in every Jewish home. A prayer book, a Bible, and a book of Psalms. Then you want to get the Mishnah, you want to get the Talmud, you want to get this, you want to do more study and more study. That's fine. But these 3 got to be. The reason why we have them is because always remember that we as Jews are a nation of deeds. What you think in your mind and how your theology goes, whatever you think, you think. But it's the actions that you take. It's the very moment that you wake up and say, Maida Ani, as we explained last week, thanking God for returning your soul, is your children are looking at you, or if your pastor's children, Hashem is looking at you. And He wants to see exactly how you're going to live that day. Are you going to make a difference that day? And to me, there's nothing that substitutes Judaism. There's just absolutely nothing that can take the place of we as Jews. That doesn't mean that everybody should be Jewish, although I personally love converts. I encourage converts. The more the merrier. I think converts bring in a tremendous amount of enthusiasm to Judaism. When someone converts into Judaism, you can't even imagine how excited they are to take everything that we're talking about seriously. Unlike if I was talking to people that were doing this for 40 years, they think they care about, big deal, rabbi, shmabbi, who needs a rabbi? But someone that converts and comes into Judaism brings a vitality, brings an excitement, a joie de vivre into Judaism. So I say the more the merrier, baby. As many as 1 billion Chinese convert today, I guarantee you the problems of the Middle East are solved in an instant. Think about that for just a second. If 1 billion Chinese converted to Judaism today, the balance of power in the Middle East immediately shifts to Israel's favor. No doubt about that. I could tell you, no doubt about it. But I'm working on it, one by one. And that's it, one by one. By the time I'm finished, I'll be a very old man, but I have no plans to go anywhere, so why not? All right? And that, my friends, is practical. There's so much more we could discuss, and so much more that Judaism is wider than the ocean, deeper than the sea, that we can talk about. But I think for now we have enough information for the next. What we'll do, go ahead, Victor.
Real quick question. What does it say on the scroll of the mezuzah?
In the mezuzah, it talks about the 2 chapters of the Shema, V'yahavta and V'haya in Shemaya, which are found in the books of Deuteronomy.
So it's nothing. It's not just...
No, it's very small. It's about this big. It's not as big as a Sefer Torah, of course, and it's not as big as the scrolls that go into tefillin. When we put on the tefillin, there's longer scrolls. This is depending how big the words are, but it's no bigger than this. Small enough so you could roll it up and put it into a cover. Are there any other questions?
Are you allowed to read on the Sabbath?
Absolutely.
Are you allowed to take a book off the shelf?
Oh yeah, very, very, very important. Good question. Good question. It's not only should you, it's a good thing to do. The more you read on the Sabbath, the more, because you have time. You have time. During the week, we can make excuses for ourselves. We're busy, we're working, we're doing things. But on the Sabbath, we have nothing really to do. So we can crack out a book, read, and just whatever. See, Judaism is big enough that there's so many things written about Judaism, whatever you're interested in. If you're a person that's inclined to study rules and regulations and laws, my God, there's so much of that. If you're a person that's into philosophy, that likes to deal with the theology and all of the, and all of the beliefs and faiths of Judaism, there's that. If you're a Kabbalist, a mystic, there's that. If you want to read stories, legends, history, there's that. It spans the globe. And that's what we Jews have been known for. This is the wisdom and the understanding that separates us from the rest of the people. We are called the people of the book. Well, and we should know. But unfortunately...
Is that where the stereotype comes in with the doctors and the lawyers?
Exactly, absolutely. That's exactly where it comes in. Because we have always stressed education, education, education before anything else. Now, it's funny, and unfortunately in America, if you walk on a plane and you see someone reading the Bible, I'll bet you $100 to 1 that person is a Christian and not a Jew. If they're reading the Bible, it's a Christian because they take it seriously. And if someone's reading the Wall Street Journal, good chance they're Jewish. Not necessarily, but it's a good chance that they're Jewish. Why?
Say that should be in a Jewish home, and I thought, no, better.
That should be what? That should be a Jewish?
Yeah, in a Jewish home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's we were thinking the same. We're thinking the same way. But that, my friends, is unfortunate. That's become more true than not, because Christians, I'm not talking about all non-Jews, but there is the fundamentalist Christians that believe in the Bible, read the Bible, live with the Bible, and on the plane, they study it. I've been on a plane many times and I see a person cracking out the Bible, and you just know
that person is a Christian, and they read it, they underline it, they live with it, the stories are to them real. How many Jews you find on a plane, unless they're Orthodox, schlepping around the book, but we need to reverse the trend. Go ahead, Shoshana.
If someone's, whatever, conservative or more, you're going to have something, a text that's Hebrew and English. And most likely, I would believe that they know they're not to bring it into, certain areas, like the restroom. So that makes it extraordinarily inconvenient to have something you can't carry with you everywhere.
Why can't you carry it everywhere?
I thought you couldn't carry it in the restroom.
Well, you can put it in your wall, you can put it in your pocketbook, and close your pocketbook. You could bring it into the restroom.
What is he going to do then? You carry a pocketbook in?
Yeah, you can get around it. But it's hard to carry a chumash around with you. I wouldn't think that's not too convenient. But when you're on a plane, you could have a chumash because everybody has carry-on luggage. You could put it in your luggage. That's not a problem. But on a day-to-day basis, you're probably right. Carrying around a stone chumash would be a little bit of a problem. But if I wanted to, if I was dedicated to this book and I had to go to the washroom, good chance if I left this outside, no one's going to take it. I have a feeling that they crack this open. Nah, it's not, this is, that's like the guy, anyways. Any other questions? No? Okay. That ends this. Maybe we'll pick up this course the next semester. We'll do a little bit more. We went through a few other things and we'll go from there. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.